Oh, well, how have you been? You been doing well?
Well, it varies. There's all kinds of grieving to be done when you have any kind of chronic illness
Yes.
because it's dynamic. One day you're feeling great and you're thinking, wow, this is unusual. This is so good. And then it doesn't last. Or you have goals for yourself. In my case, the weight loss is going well. I wanted to get more fit and be able to travel again to do presenting. And I've got this herniated disc that cannot be managed because the doctor took care of the left side of the herniated disc, which means the right side can't be touched unless I want to start a series of what do they call those fusions?
Yeah.
And he says he doesn't want to do that to me. So I have to work within the limits of the tolerance of that disc because once it gets aggravated, it's going to be aggravated for a little while.
Yeah.
So I've
That's,
had to come to terms with the fact that traveling to present is probably not going to be something that I can get back into.
yeah.
And it's kind of hard for me because that's something I loved. Back when I was mobile, I just loved it. It was this adventure and meeting new people and sampling new places and just having fun
Yeah.
and being in the bed most of the time and having to really plan excursions and people having to make free time to drive me and all these things that I could once do without bat an eye. So there's grieving that, and then there's the anxiety of stepping into its alternative, trying new
Yeah.
things, and all of that emotion that needs to be navigated. So that's pretty much my normal. The pain is well managed, thank goodness.
Good.
My kids are all
That's,
adults, and I'm trying to teach them to launch and how to manage their own hesitations and things. So it's continuous learning for me, for them, and I guess I'm always curious, always observing, always trying to make a difference. That's kind of
yes.
where I am. But I don't like to answer a simple question like that with fine. How are you?
Yes. Good for you. Good for
I
you.
I introspect so that I'm clear on how I am, not deceiving myself, and so I'm giving an honest answer to the other person.
Yes. And when you know the other person is genuinely interested in how you're doing, it's not just asking it as what is it called? Um, the thing that you do.
Hmm.
It makes a difference too. And so I can relate so much with all that you just said. Everything. The I have herniated discs in my neck. That's why I have had to have so many surgeries. And I understand your surgeon's or your doctor's point of view because I actually had to have the second surgery because of the first one. And it becomes a process where when you start to fuse them, the vertebrae on the top and bottom start to become affected, and then you have to begin fusing those. And it is kind of a series, unless it's something that you can just live with. And so I have thought, before, like, what if I didn't have that first fusion and I tried to manage it naturally? I just wonder what would happen. But obviously, that's not what happened. But it's an interesting road to travel for sure. Um, I have to have people drive me if I go very far too, and I have to rest. Like I have to have a place to lay down. If I'm going somewhere, I have to lay down and rest. And it's yeah, I understand the grief for sure, and I'm
Yeah,
sorry that
they're
you're dealing with that.
and I'm grateful to have folks like you out there because I can say, have you dealt with this before? Were you able to accommodate it? And hear all kinds of wonderful ideas. It's like exchanging recipes,
Yeah, right.
and having a community out there has really helped me realize that I can have a bigger life than maybe I imagined. It's just
Yeah.
a matter of being able to afford the latest $3,000 accommodation that lets you get out there.
Yeah.
Because in our country, we have the disability tax. Because we're also independently wealthy, right? We could just whip out the ATM card for all this stuff.
Of course. Yes. Oh my gosh. I know you mentioned you're on the weight loss path, and I wonder if that will help the pain in that herniated disc at some point. Is that, has your doctor mentioned that?
Well, just about every doctor I have has been telling me to lose weight for whatever issue they think it's attributed to.
Oh,
And I need to lose weight regardless. It's
me
just
too.
it's just
Uh,
not healthy. And I want to be around as long as possible for my three boys. They're all on the autism spectrum as well as having ADHD. And they have big blind spots in not only their understanding of the world, but in knowledge of their executive functions and how to accommodate it. So it's having to really stay after them until the things click. And like any parent who probably whether you have kids with challenges or not, you want to make sure that they're okay before you check out.
yeah.
And for these boys, it's probably going to take longer. And I don't want to succumb to the potpourri of ailments here that I have before they're ready. So I'm taking care of me for me, but also for them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. I mean, that's your why. And that's where you, as you know, that's where you have to start. It starts with your why, and that's what makes it worth it.
Well, my
So,
bigger why is I want to help create a more inclusive and accepting world so that I'm not sending them out there into a shark tank. Now, I'm not talking about creating some kind of a utopia, but at least planting the seeds of understanding that we're all human beings, regardless of how awkwardly we may show up.
yes.
And if we start getting to know the human being first, instead of being drawn in by the differences and the comparison and start labeling these differences, those are all secondary. So learning how to be more human first and foremost is what I've been spending probably the past 20 years learning how to do for myself so that I can model it instead of just giving lip service to it. And it's not easy work,
Yeah.
but when you can do it, you find that you can connect with anyone you meet.
That's, I love it so much because that's a direct reflection of me. That's what Polish the Mirror is. It's helping you connect with your soul, helping you connect with other people's souls. And people tell me a lot, like when I meet you in person, it's like I've known you forever, and they, tell me all their life story. It's like I have my open sign on that people just start, bearing their souls with me. But I feel like it's because I'm seeing them as a soul, not as a person. And I feel like that's pretty much what you're doing too. You're just seeing who they really are, not who their shell shows up to be.
And showing up with curiosity as opposed to an agenda.
Yeah.
You just want to experience that person. Your eyes and your ears are open, and you're just like, tell me your story. Tell me
Yes.
what you value. And I have this profound wonder of how people make the decisions they make. Why they do this instead of that?
Fear. Most of the time it's out of fear, I'm sure.
People that overestimate their own insight. What one of my teachers called immaculate perception. They believe their perception is spotless. They don't need to
Mm,
question it, reflect upon it. The way
yes.
they decide it is just the way it is.
Yes.
Can't have any kind of a meaningful conversation with those kind of folks.
Boy, is that true? I have tried.
Hmm?
Oh my gosh. I think that's one of the things that resonates with you and I so deeply. Like I really feel connected to you. And I feel like that's probably why, because I'm the same way. Like I don't judge people. I'm like, you just be who you are and allowing them just acceptance, of who they are and where they're at. I have been in different stages in my life too. And so is everyone. You just accept people for where they are and help them move to the next stage.
I don't know if this is true for you, and I'm not about to pretend I'm a nearly 100% accepting of my situation. That is ongoing work, especially
Yeah,
because it keeps changing. There's always something else to have to adjust to.
right.
But just in getting exhausted with trying to convince other people or convince yourself I'm good enough just like they are, or feeling like you need to justify why you're using this accommodation or that accommodation. But when you let go of all that stuff and realize I've got absolutely nothing to prove to this person in front of me, I'm tired of these explanations. I just want to be a person and live my life. And then it occurs to you, well, what if I gave the other person that same amount of grace?
Mm, yeah.
And then you show up as I'm not going to try so hard. I'm just going to be honest about who I am and where I'm at. And I give you the same leeway. And people can just sense that. Depending on what you
Yes.
believe or don't believe, just ask the quantum physicists. Energy is what we ultimately all are, and we can influence each other's energetic fields.
Yes.
So when we show up and we are at ease in our own skin, we're not showing up with anxiety or mistrust or frustration. Just, hey, I'm here, you're here. Let's make the best of this. We affect other people's energies. So,
Yeah. It's so true. I mean, and I think they call them what, empaths, where
oh
people
yeah,
who are
I'm,
just,
I'm a super empath.
my gosh, me too. Like I can sense people's energy. Oh my word, so
It's
deeply.
hard to be in a room.
Yeah, it does. And, I love to network with in my local community because the places I go are pretty much the doctor's office, and then maybe
Yeah.
to the grocery store to do a drive-through pickup thing. And so I think I need to meet people. So I love to do networking events locally. And so meeting people in person for the first time, meeting them for coffee or for lunch, I sense that like there's almost immediately this tension of, like you said, like they have an agenda and it's like I have to work to break down that wall. Or that what I'm finding is that when I come in and with my calm, no agenda, let's just be who we are, that their walls start coming down. And so I feel like the world needs more people like us who are just going to be who we are and accept the state we're in, for the most part, to set an example for other people, to understand that you don't have to have an agenda or, be fearful of everything. You can just be, and it's a much more pleasant life.
And the networking, as you mentioned, is key to that because people get to meet you. And the more people that get to meet you, the more realize there are people like this out there. And if they want to be around you, just like with that first meeting, the energy rubs off to people that are receptive to this way of being. And thank goodness we have social media now,
Right.
sharing things like this, little videos, articles, and that ripple will hopefully inspire people to give this a shot.
Yeah.
And we're
Yeah.
not we're not pretending for 1 second like we are espousing some cosmic knowledge, that's privilege. Huh.
Exactly.
We just discovered that it is way too flippin' hard to put on this show.
Right. That's so right.
And just drop it all and say, hey, I'm imperfect. I make no promises.
Yeah.
However, if I do things that are hurtful and I could change that by being made aware of it, I want that feedback.
Yes. Yes.
I don't want anybody to blow sunshine on me because I have no illusions about my imperfection.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that. I grew up living in a state of fear, like just constantly trying to meet people's expectations, trying to fit in, trying not to make people mad, trying to, do this and do that. And I lived in just an exhaustive anxiety state. And once with my chronic illnesses kicked in and the injury and all of that happened, it's like I couldn't do that. Like my body couldn't handle that. And so it's like it just, not that it stopped, but it's like I couldn't maintain that, if that makes sense. And so I
Yeah,
had to just be like, okay, this is just how it is. And people can accept it, or, I'm just going to be like this because this is how I am and not try to pretend anymore. And it's so freeing. It really is.
I couldn't get anything right growing up because I didn't know about the autism and the ADHD and the dyslexia. So no matter how hard I tried, I still ended up going in the wrong direction, misunderstanding directions or expectations, blurting something out that got me a slap in the face or a friend saying, "You're a jerk." And I never knew what I was doing wrong. And it wasn't until college where someone took me aside and said, "Look, you can't say that to people,"
Mm,
and was open enough to let me ask them questions instead of just saying, "You should know that."
yeah.
At your age, how can you not know it? That's common sense. It was never, "Well, I'm glad you asked. This is the situation." It took the
Yeah.
longest time. And it wasn't until COVID hit where I couldn't just go for a walk or go to the coffee shop or do something else to distract myself from my thinking, that things just kind of caved in on me about how much life I dedicated to people pleasing
Mm,
and how it was making me feel like I needed to maintain this perception while inside I was a terrified imposter. And when I realized I can't do this anymore, there was a lot of crying and a lot of venting and just getting it out, getting it out, getting it out. And I poured so much trauma over those 2 or 3-ish years of COVID that I came out the other side a different person.
mm,
And I was always
yes.
growing anyway, but as far as the emotional stuff, it was really condensed to an accelerated course for those 3 years.
Accelerated life course. Yeah. That's, I think all the time, like, there are no rules. Like, there are no rules to life. There's no rule book. We make it up. It's what we expect it to be, but it's not. Like, it just is. And so when we go into things with expectations, I think that's when everything gets messed up. Like, if we just allow it to be what it is and allow people to be who they are, oh my word, people would get along so much better. And I know you were talking about ADHD and autism. My youngest son has both, and he does say things that are totally inappropriate and does not realize it. And so when I say to him, like, you can't say that, is totally clueless that it's offensive. And so I really understand what you're saying about, you're just saying things because you didn't know any better. And then once somebody said to you, helped educate you, that it made a huge difference. And I see, isn't that what you do now?
Well, I want to preface my answer
Okay.
by giving a little context. Because I was so rejected and left out growing up, and then when I realized my boys had the same challenges, it was a matter of letting them figure it out for themselves, or me helping them figure out how to navigate relationships and connection and how to have difficult conversations. And when I realized just how unprepared I was for that, I began immersing myself. Lexi was kind of doing this beforehand, trying to figure out how to do relationships, how to connect with people, how to be a better listener instead of a monologuer, and all of those things that I was not skillful at. And knowing my boys had the same challenges, I dove even deeper. And because of that commitment, I mean, I can't satisfy my appetite for getting better and better and better at connection. And I got so good at it, being able to articulate and break it down, that people asked me to begin teaching it to them, to their kids. And I've been doing that for the past 17 years now. And I just keep learning more and more and more because other people are into this and they're doing research and they're writing articles, which makes me have an aha moment. And then I can figure out how to tie that back into the ADHD. So when I learn, everybody else learns. When I get better, other people get better. Because I don't want to do this in isolation, because I've been looking for connection for so long in my life that I'd say over the past 5 years or so, I found some of the best relationships I've ever had. And some of that I think is because of the level I'm at as far as my skills. And one thing I cannot emphasize enough, I'm as enthusiastic as anyone else in terms of putting down the mask, being yourself. But the idea that learning skills, social skills that allow you to be more effective with other people, calling that masking is ridiculous.
Mm.
I read somewhere else, I don't know, last week on a list of what is masking. Someone said rehearsing a conversation ahead of time. Someone called that
No,
masking.
no,
That's ridiculous.
no.
You know, I know people who don't have these issues that practice ahead of time.
Yes.
And when you have the shoddy working memory I do, I often need to rehearse it just to remember what I want to talk about. And then I got to make notes about that because once I'm in the moment and the other person's talking to me and they ask me a question that I hadn't considered, now I'm pondering that question and my working memory can hold so little. Everything I wanted to say, gone.
Yeah.
I need to take into account what my executive function gaps are instead of believing that I have the right to just have them and the rest of the world needs to bend to me.
Mm. So good.
Because that is what so much of the movement believes now. I'm perfect the way I am. Everybody else has to adjust. Well, is the reverse also true? Ooh, then we've got a double standard. When some people come to me and say, why can't I demand this of others? And why can't I demand that? And my response is because they have needs too.
Right.
We can't pretend that just because they're in the majority, and yes, the majority make the decisions about what's accommodated and what isn't, we're not going to get anywhere by saying, you're wrong, you suck, you're selfish, you do this, you're not concerned about me at all. Who's going to listen to that? It's like any other abusive relationship. I'm going to tune you out. But
Right.
if you show up saying, hey, I got some win-win agreements that are make both of our lives better, and that's my approach. If it isn't win-win, and not every situation is, of course, but the situations you can make win-win, more of those can actually make people enthusiastic about supporting you.
Yes. Oh, that's so good. I'm going to jump back to something that you said because it resonated with me deeply that we're always learning. Like you said, you're, always learning new things and utilizing them to help others. And I feel like that is me. Like I feel like I'm a lifelong learner, but I think what happens with people like us is that we learn something, especially if is helping us, and we want to share it with others. Like we don't want to keep it for ourselves. We feel like we've been given this knowledge and understanding to share it with others so that we can help others. And so we are truly heart centered in wanting to help others in everything that we do. And I know that you're like that too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm 54 years old and I feel like the little kid who found this cool thing and wants to show his parents. Look at this, look at this, look what I found. And
Yes.
I want to tell someone else about it. Like, hey, I just heard this cool idea. I'm also and I got this from my late mother. I want to talk. I want to, I think out loud. I process my feelings and my thoughts out loud. I have to use language to do that. I can't sit quietly and think it through because what I end up doing is ruminating or only remembering two of the things that are bothering me. I need to talk it out to appreciate how much is in there or what the sequence of things is. I need to get out of my head in that way. So talking about it with somebody else and saying, hey, what do you think about this? Helps me think about it even better and have a more thorough understanding because my understanding tends to be right here. And I have a lot of big picture people around me because my brain really is unable to appreciate the big picture. So I need to borrow what one of my clients calls outsourcing your executive functions. I need to borrow somebody else's bigger picture to help me think bigger.
I love that because my husband has ADHD. And your explanation helped me so much just now because I see him doing that. He talks a lot, and sometimes I'm like, why are you saying this out loud? I don't say that, but I'm thinking like, why are you saying this out loud? And I feel like that's why. And then there are times where he will just be so deep in thought, like you said, in ruminating, that if I say something to him, it's like it jolts him out of it, like he's in this state of super focus or something, that it's hard to come out of. And so I see both sides of that. And your explanation, I just want you to know, helped me just now understand that that's what he's doing and that's why. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, absolutely. And self-awareness or introspection has always been part of my personality. I was always caught in imagination, probably because that was part of how I escaped the bullying growing up. I imagined myself a superhero or on an adventure or just somebody of high value that people wanted to listen to and respect instead of beat up. And the more I got comfortable with introspection and through Buddhism and my degree in social work, I learned how to introspect more gently and non-judgmentally. And it was easier to go deep and discover the nuance of why do I do this? Why do I think that way? And being able to articulate it, because again, I have the gift of language. I can take no credit for that. It's just how I'm built. So I use that introspection with my gift of language to kind of communicate this is how I found this, and this is how I got past this hurt. And that's kind of what I give to the world at this point.
Ah, I love that so much because the whole premise of my podcast, it's Polish the Mirror, but it's a reflection of my life, having lived the past 10 years with a broken neck that went undetected for 6 months. But I've been able to find hope in the midst of that. And so it's all about allowing people to share their stories of hope gained in the midst of adversity. And I didn't see a platform where people could share their stories. So I created one. And so that's why I created the podcast. And I hear you saying that now, that this is a version of hope that you've been able to find in the midst of all of that adversity you've been through.
I mean, hope, and there's some people that knock hope,
Yeah.
but hope is the recognition that things can be better than they are. Okay, what's wrong with that? And it's not passive. I mean, there are some people that treat hope like it's something that's going to deliver for me. If I have hope, things will just come to me.
Mm.
No, hope is something that you also need to have into your, allow yourself to be influenced by that. If there's hope, if things can be better, that means if I take action in a positive direction, there's a reason to do that because it could be moving me towards something better. But if you think there's no hope, what's the point? You will act according to that.
Yes.
So as long as the hope informs action instead of stagnation, then it's useful.
That's so true. Are you familiar with Dr. Chen Hellman? He's a hope
Mhm.
researcher at the University of Oklahoma.
No, but I'm going to look into them.
You should. He has proven that hope can be taught, that it's a science. And his definition of hope is pretty much what you just said, that it's the hope that things can get better, but also that you have an impact in making it better, that you have a way to take action to make it better. And so that hope is something that we do, that we can live out, that we can teach others. He has a book called, I think it's called Hope Rising. Very, very good. And
Well,
so that
how about
was,
that? Great minds, huh?
yeah, I know, right? It's I just, because I love to spread hope. That's one of the things, you and I both. And so when I came across his book, and I worked at the University of Oklahoma, so I was like, what? How did I miss this? He's been doing it for like 12 years or something. He's done a
Well,
TEDx talk. There's a TEDx talk he did about it too, so that might be something to look into. But it's
absolutely.
fascinating,
Very
fascinating.
cool.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Oh my goodness. I have loved this conversation with you. Oh my gosh. It's
Likewise,
like,
every time you and I talk, we just find more ways that we're connected.
I know. That's how it is, right? You just, when you resonate with someone deeply, it just keeps going and going, and you
And when
just
you're
keep,
willing to be human with each other,
yeah,
that provides
yeah,
so many more opportunities to discover, I don't know, the billions of nuances that we each have as a person.
yeah. And vulnerable, that's another word that comes to mind is vulnerability. You today have been very vulnerable and been willing to share, things that most people aren't comfortable sharing. And my whole book, my best-selling book is all about being vulnerable. I had to be vulnerable to share that story, and I feel like that's one of the reasons that it has been such a hit with people, that people can really resonate with it, because I don't pull any punches. I tell it how it was and what I felt like, and I let you inside my head and my feelings and my emotions. And when people are vulnerable, there's just a connection there.
When you show people that something that they may feel embarrassed about or ashamed of doesn't kill you when you share it. And the more of us that give that kind of permission and that modeling, people will hopefully stop hiding their pain and acting out against the world because of that pain.
Mm.
But yeah, we
That's
can we
powerful.
can get together again and discuss that.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I have never thought about it like that, that people acting out against their pain or acting out from their pain against the world. Whew, okay, that's going to take me deep. So that is going to be another conversation for sure.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for joining me again and for being willing to take the time to chat with me. I always love it.
It is my privilege,